Yes.
Abstain.
Stay. All right. That being done, the next item on our agenda tonight is the operating budget for the Human Resource and Payroll Department. Joanne? Frederick?
Good evening.
Joanne's our Personnel Administrator, Director,
HR
Yeah.
specialist is the title.
Specialist.
But it's fine.
All right, Specialist.
So thank you for having me to present my budget. I did put a small PowerPoint together, and I will basically go through that with you, and if there's any questions, feel free to ask.
Sure.
So the makeup of our department has changed a little bit this year. I started back in 2019. Originally, I had a part-time senior clerk who was working with me, but she left me at the end of December. And in lieu of that, we had also taken on all of the benefits administration for the town and the school. That happened in July of 2021.
Right.
So just having myself and a part-time person wasn't going to be enough. And then I actually lost my part-time person, so I hired a full-time. At the initial stages, she was 37 and a half hours. Benefits and payroll administrator to assist me because we took on all of the additional work from the school department for benefits, along with the fact that we do all of the retirees as well. So it was a real huge amount of additional work taken on. So for this coming fiscal year, my full-time payroll benefits and payroll administrator is going to 40 hours from 37 and a half. So there's a little bit of a difference in the dollars there. And that's the reason why. So we've actually eliminated the position and just, there's 2 full-time people at this time. So basically, we provide the following services. I am your ADA officer and your sexual harassment officer, handling any kind of claims that come forth in regards to those matters. We currently only process the town payroll. It's about 175 employees on a biweekly basis that we do payroll for. Obviously, I just mentioned this, but we do the benefits for the town and school and the retirees. I also handle the unemployment. I would go to the unemployment hearings on behalf of the town if there was a need. I'm also in charge of handling workers' comp claims, IOD claims. I'm also doing EEO reporting for the town and training, and then obviously COVID. So we had a lot of work with COVID, having to transition a lot of the work that we did into like PDF fillable forms and things like that, because we still had open enrollments, we still had people coming on, so we had to change the way we did business, basically. And recruitment and onboarding, always hiring and bringing new people on. So as you're probably aware, Fallon Health Plan last year decided that they were no longer going to do commercial business, and they will no longer be providing health care for the town and school employees and retirees. Well, actually, town and school. Let me take that back. Town and school are effective June 30th, 2022. So they're no longer in, doing that type of business. They're focusing on other types of medical services, I think, to do with Medicare. So we went out for bid. We did an RFQ, and our broker, who is NFP, they helped to put our RFQ out. We got it out. We had our bids come back in October, and then we had multiple IAC meetings, Insurance Advisory Committee meetings. I think we had at least 6 of them, where we had anybody who was a viable replacement for Fallon come in and do their pitch, and so we basically had 2 options. We had Maya, or we had a group called Mass Strategic Health Group. Everybody else that quoted, we're quoting 20 to 31% increases for our insurance. So obviously, we didn't have them come in and meet with the IAC because that would have not made too much sense. So Maya and MSG came in, they presented, and the IAC made a recommendation to the Select Board in January to move forward with Mass Strategic Health Group, who actually, the plans would be Harvard Pilgrim for the active employees and Aetna for retirees 65 plus. So that's what's the outcome of it was.
Excuse me,
Yes.
what does IAC stand for?
Insurance Advisory Committee. So they're the committee, there's a member from every union that is on that committee that we meet with to make decisions regarding to health insurance.
And what's MIA? Maya?
MIA is the Katie?
Massachusetts Interlocal
Insurance Agency?
Association or something?
Association?
Something like that. It's-
Yeah.
I
Sorry
know,
for
it's
the
an
abbreviation.
acronym.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
sorry for all those
Health.
abbreviations.
It's okay.
So what that entails for my department this year is I've got to move over 500 people from current benefits to new benefits by June 30th. And because of the change to the Mass Strategic Health Group, we also have to move all the retirees. So the retirees who currently have the Blue Cross plans and the Tufts plans, they now have to all migrate over to the Aetna plan. So it's a ton of changing, and we've already got our kickoff meeting set for the end of the month, and I'll get them letters out and everything next week. So we're pushing it along as quickly as possible, so it gives us enough time to make sure we get our folks that are living in Florida and Nevada, and also enough time for people to be able to find out, what they're moving to. It's exactly the same plan, setup, the same co-pays, all of that is exactly identical to Fallon. It's just a different health plan vendor.
How about affordability? I mean, if I'm a retiree and I,
So
Spend it-
actually, the
spend it-
retirees are really getting a good deal because their rates are going down.
but is it portable? I mean, like Blue Cross Medex, which I have.
Yep.
If I'm in Florida and I'm sick, I'm fine. A network's the key to anything.
Right, so the Aetna network, it's a PPO network. Now,
Oh, so you have to, see, I don't
Yeah.
have to call anybody to ask, nor
Nope,
may I.
Nope, so as long as whoever is taking your Medicare insurance, takes your Medicare insurance, they will take this Aetna PPO. That's what we were guaranteed.
So there's no,
No, and again, I am not versed in it yet because I have not even had my first,
Sure.
session with them, but that is my understanding, so as long
Portability is
as-
key, network's
Yep.
always key.
Yep, and the rates are going down. I believe he quoted me yesterday that they're gonna be $145, and right now they're $174.
Oh, great.
So that'll be great for retirees.
Because I know retirees tend to migrate to Arizona,
They're all
Florida.
over the place.
Yeah,
Right. And that's one of the things they said that was nice about this is because it is a PPO, provider plan that, you can ask, the network is huge. So I'm believing what I believe, and hopefully everybody will be happy with it.
Sure.
With the change.
Not to interrupt you for a second, if you're going to record this meeting, I need to know, you must inform me, and then that I have to then announce that you're recording the meeting.
I don't know, I'm sorry I was late, I didn't want to interrupt.
That's okay.
Okay, but I've got to know that.
Yep, I'm recording it.
So this meeting's being videoed and recorded, and so I want to make sure everybody understands that. All right. All right, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
No,
Joanne,
that's
but
quite all right. So this is, there's a lot of information here.
yeah,
But
I went through, we had the
Yeah.
Fallon stuff, and that's the question I had. I said, wait a minute. I thought we were moving from away from Fallon, so.
This is the plans migrating over to the new Mass Strategic Health Group plans and the costs.
And how do they compare? I mean, looking at all these numbers compared to the
the
4.330.
Yeah, the rate of, the increase for the new Harvard Pilgrim for the active employees, I believe is an 8% increase.
8% increase. Well, that would translate also to us, I mean, the town share, whatever the town
Correct,
share is.
correct. You know, either the 80% or the 75%.
Well, some are 25, that was another question, some are 20.
So anyone who was hired prior to 2006, they grandfathered them in at a 20% cost with the town picking up 80.
Okay.
And anyone after 2006.
25 and
It's
75.
a 75-25 split.
I kind of guessed that, but I wanted to,
I mean, it's kind of, and it's difficult because there's so many numbers and, you know, when you're
Yeah,
trying to
right.
explain that to folk, but until, you know, all of those folk, you know, prior to 2006 are no longer here and that goes away, we're always going to be faced with an 80-20 and a 75-25. So I'm not going to try to attempt to explain this, except to say that it does give you the details about, you know, how many people are enrolled in which plans, and it kind of breaks down, you know, the 80s and the 80-20 split, and then obviously for our retirees, they pay 50% of the cost.
the only two questions I had, you had something about opt-out, 160,000, and
Yep.
I wasn't sure on what that
So
meant. I was trying
opt-out
to guess.
is, if you are, there's two ways you can get opt-out. Opt-out is if you do not take the town's health insurance, okay?
You have a spouse that,
The town, and you go on a spouse's plan.
right,
Or a parent's plan,
Mm-hmm.
right, because you're not 26 yet. You can receive a opt-out payment from the town. For a family plan, the town pays $4,400 a year. And for an individual plan, they pay $2,200 a year. So versus paying whatever it would cost to have that person on a medical plan, which would be much more than that.
Sure, sure.
They give them
A
a
stipend.
perk to stay on their spouse's or their parents' plan, and that's what the opt-out piece is.
And the
So
other
that
one was-
number is the total number
165,
of between the town
165,000.
and the school that currently are on.
Opting out for their spouse, possibly,
Correct.
or usually, that's usually the way it is.
Correct.
And then level funded, the 114, that was the other question I had.
That is a Katie question, I'm not sure, Katie?
What level funded meant.
So the Fallon, I'm gonna address the whole thing then. On the budget, Fallon is our current health plan, and when we were developing the budget, we're taking the Fallon numbers, what we expect for increase, so that's the census for the Fallon folks. Then you have the opt-out, which is estimated, and we don't have our new expected personnel on their costs, so we're not gonna reduce the health insurance budget. We're going to make sure that we have enough to cover everybody going forward, so it's level funded from last year.
So to bring the number up to the 4,330,000, which I think it was.
It should be, I think it's been the same for several years now.
Yeah, that's what we had.
But you don't have.
4,330,000.
On the budget, you have 2 years of actual and then one prior budget
Right.
year. So you're only seeing, you're seeing what we spent in 2 years and then what we budgeted. But if you were to see the budget, you would probably see that it's been exactly the same for the last several years.
Yeah, I did. I-
Costs aren't going to go down generally unless we make plan changes, so.
Or
we're gonna
reduce
keep it.
personnel or something of that nature, or whatever. which-
Right, right.
Or people on retirement pass away,
True.
that would have an impact.
Yep, true.
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
moving forward. So these are just some of the new perks to the retiree health benefits, you know, for the 65 plus. And we are setting up an actual breakfast at the senior center on the 23rd of March, where there'll be a breakfast put on by MSHG, and they will go over all the plans with retirees that plan to attend and serve them breakfast, so.
That's for the retirees.
For the retirees.
And
The
then you're going to
other-
take care of the full-time
The full-time people, we have 4 other meetings going on.
meetings for those.
Yep, and the schedules will be put out on the new board out front, and then there'll be mailings going out next
Well,
week.
this is major. I mean, this is a,
It's a big, it's a big
Yeah.
undertaking. Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to give a little information about the hire statistics, because, you know, we don't really ever talk too much about that. But from January of 2021 through February of 2022, we hired 35 new people. So, and then, so we currently have 183 active employees in the town. And that's kind of the breakdown of which departments they work in. Just thought that would be kind of nice
what
information.
would have been more interesting is since we laid so many people off in 2020 due to COVID, to see the net change, because I think it would be the number of 35 would be reduced because we're bringing back people that, I mean, people that forgoed salary increases.
Correct.
People went hours, and then people were laid off. We reduced our budget, I think, by almost $1.4 million, and the school did the same.
Yep.
So in 2020, so a fair comparison would have, go back another year, and then you'd see
I'll
that,
put that in my particular file
yeah,
for
because it
next
isn't
year.
35. You're
Yeah.
probably bringing back maybe more than half of that.
We've replaced some of the positions that were gone,
Yeah,
correct? Yes.
quite a few.
Yep, yep, absolutely. So I track monthly the unemployment costs for the town, and I do take care of tracking that, because it's important to know. It fluctuates, obviously, when we had layoffs, it was much higher. But I do track it, and I do keep track by school and town, and we use that information, and I supply dollars, at the end of the year for the next year's budget and such. So as of, I believe, this is as of, we're in March, so this would be February, that's how much we've spent, 42,000 in unemployment.
And we budgeted 65, or we're budgeting 65, right? Right.
So, I mean, we're trending, but,
Well, now, I think we have some temporary, because of COVID money, the school had hired to bring back the children back up to speed, being with remote learning and everything. Was able to hire some staff, but they're temporary. They're 3 years, I think, and then the funding runs out, so those people will be laid off when there's no more money, and that's going to impact our unemployment. I know they had talked about squirreling away some of that money that they got for COVID to mitigate this big one-time hit for unemployment, which is out there. I think it would be 24 probably,
yeah, I think.
FY '24.
I met with the superintendent, I believe it was last year on that, and I knew that, I think they hired, I'm guesstimating right now, I think like 35 to 40 people.
Right,
And
something
then
like
it
35.
was gonna be good for like 2 or 3 years.
3 years.
I
So
recall
FY
that.
'24,
Yep.
those people will have to, because the funding won't be there.
Right.
I mean,
I know
it's a
Justin.
huge number.
Yeah, Justin had,
Yeah.
called me, in regards to trying to help him, with some numbers for that, for their budget over
To
there.
figure out what they were going to have to hold back.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
All right.
So in May of this year, the governor had signed legislature for emergency paid sick leave for COVID, which allowed us as a municipality to get reimbursed for up to 40 hours or $850 per employee who was out due to COVID-related issues. And that was placed in my office to be my undertaking to go out and collect this money. So I have been doing that. And as of the last time I checked my spreadsheet, we have brought back in $50,000 that has gone to the general fund.
But you have to document that, right?
I have it all documented in a
I mean,
spreadsheet
paperwork, I
downstairs.
imagine, is,
And I have paperwork, because you have to have supporting documentation and an actual form in
the
order
doctor.
to qualify. Yep.
right,
So
like
I
a
have all of
doctor's
that
note.
in my office,
Yeah.
yep. A COVID test, that's positive and all of that. So that's been an undertaking, and I've been doing that for both the town and the school. So
All right.
that's where we're at right now, so.
So we've recovered 50,000 roughly.
So far, yep, I put a few more in today, and this is due to expire at the end of April or before, when the money runs out, so,
April or before.
yeah. So I'm waiting for another pile from the school department, and I'll probably get those processed, and hopefully we'll be able to get them reimbursed too, okay? So that's another little thing that happened this year. And so, in regards to my specific budget, I am due for a step increase, because I'll be here 4 years next year. So every 2 years I get a step increase, so that kind of counts for the increase that's there for me. And for my full-time person, it's basically her increase from the 37.5 to 40 hours, and then the 3% COLA, I think, is built into those numbers too, that we're getting.
Now, you had asked
An assistant.
for a part-time clerk vacant.
Right, so I made a decision to eliminate that position.
And make it a full-time?
And make it just 2 people full-time. Yeah, I think I can do it with 2 people. I have an excellent assistant working with me now, Karen, who's here in the audience. She is learning really, really fast. She's been with me for about 3 months. And she's picking up really well, so I think between the 2 of us, we'll be able to manage it, and, why spend more money that I don't need, so.
And that's the coordinator role?
Yeah,
The
the
senior clerk left, and I just have the benefits coordinator. Yep.
Well, you made that a full-time position, so it takes on more responsibility.
Yes,
And eliminated the need for the
Yeah, the
administrative
clerk- yeah,
part-time
The
assistant.
clerk was doing more, just general VEDA bills and things like that. This position is like my right-hand person.
Now, you took on or moved from the treasurer collector's budget, professional services for $39,450. I don't know what it was when it was in that department. I didn't go back and research
Yeah,
what the treasurer collector's budget was for FY '22 before it was moved. Was
So
it that amount?
I can speak to that somewhat, and then maybe Katie wants to jump in. My understanding of that is with Harper's, every time we process a payroll, we get invoiced, right, for that payroll process. And so we have been in payroll sending those invoices to the treasurer's office, who then pays them. So I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, that money now has just been put into my department for me to process my own invoices from Harper's.
So there's no change in the dollar amount, just
No changes.
just
Payroll
that we're just taking it out of one department, putting it in the other.
Yes, and it's level from fiscal '22. And it's payroll, and you have other modules, Joanne, I think there's a monthly fee.
Oh, yes, for the time and attendance and such. Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, so that they earn vacation dollars or whatever, or sick pay, and then you accrue that, and then we show that as a liability.
Well, that's separate.
So we have that, but we have the numbers to do that. You have to put dollars to days.
Yeah, I think what Katie's referring to is for our time and attendance system, where people punch in and out and we track
Right.
their time. We're charged $2.95 per person per month.
To
For that.
clock in, clock out, but then you
Yeah.
also have, but with that also comes earned time off and stuff too.
Yeah, that's all built into
All built into the
the
module.
accruals that I built when I came.
Yeah, it's all it covers, yeah.
Yep, so that was just moved over. I guess it does kind of make sense if it's.
Well, when you take that out of your budget, you're really looking at, you take that 39,450 out and you're comparing apples with apples, you're at $152 versus $163, $157 for a reduction of around $4,005, which is, if you go up to your payroll there, that's where that is, so it's a reduction. So you're only, you got a reduction of 2.45% if you take that out, moving
Yep.
the deck chairs.
Yep, so.
Anybody have any other questions? Joanne, you?
The only other question I had was on the request for supplies and miscellaneous. The request was 5,000. I think the manager was 4,000. Just a small difference.
Yeah, I mean, that, I don't really, honestly, I don't buy a lot of supplies. I usually have a surplus in that account. I mean, we probably will do a little bit more. We'll have to need a lot of envelopes this year for mailings and a lot of, things like that, to get out information about the benefits. But I think, overall, $1,000, it was minimal. And again, we usually do have a surplus in that. So, I just think that was the reasoning behind it. I was okay
And if
with
it's a
that.
surplus, then it accrues to free cash the following year.
Yeah.
You're right,
There's no impact to the
Yeah, so I
department.
think it just kind of made sense to
Yep.
reduce it.
getting closer to actual, okay.
Sounds good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have any questions? Right, well, you've got a big undertaking with this
Yeah,
healthcare.
indeed.
Communicating to both the employees and their spouses. Usually it's a 2-4, not a 1-4.
I'm sorry, John,
Yep, go ahead.
I just woke up. I had it marked right here. The increase from the FY 21, like, was $952 on the education and dues. And we budgeted 5,000 in FY '22. I don't know what the actual is. How come education and dues is increasing so much?
No, I think what, if I recall, they used to group it all under like one, and then they started breaking it out. So so it used to be like all lumped under one as $5,000, and then what we did is we parsed it out.
It's going the other way, though.
Yeah, it's going,
Yeah,
you're going from,
FY '20, we spent $1,188 actual. '21, we spent $952 actual.
and now we're at
Then,
5.
starting in FY '22, there was a budgeted amount of 5,000, and for '23,
Same.
it's the same. So it's like we've taken $3,800.
If I could speak to that just for a moment.
That'd be great.
You'll see with a lot of budgets that the education and dues are going to be smaller for fiscal '20 and fiscal '21. A lot of that's to do with the COVID-19.
Oh, okay.
So there wasn't a lot of travel to spend, so we don't want to reduce those budgets because we want people to go to this continuing education. We want them to pay their dues, we want them, so they'll have travel, and now she has 2 professionals in her role, so she's gonna have more. So I think that that's part of it. There may be a couple, in these spreadsheets, we have extra details under each line, so there may be other items under education and dues, there may be other accommodations or other things for employees under there. So it's just that because of COVID, these lines are definitely underutilized, but we're not gonna penalize any departments for that.
Right.
And you are handling COVID, as you said before.
Thank you.
All right, so does that, I don't know, does it require, I guess, some additional education and how to fill
Well,
out
I
forms?
am a certified payroll professional,
Yeah.
so I have to keep my certification intact, which requires me to go annually to a New England conference. And I am going to be getting my SHRM certification, hopefully, over the next year. So there'll be some cost incurred in getting that piece of the pie, too.
Any other questions? If not, is there anything other you want to tell us other than that?
No, just thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. And
Have a
good luck
great-
on healthcare.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next up is veterans.
Evening, Mr. Chair.
Hey,
Committee
Mr.
members.
Adams, Dave Adams, our Veterans Administrator.
Just bear with me, this will be my first one I've had to do, so try to go through it smoothly as possible and
You'll be fine.
answer any questions I can answer tonight.
All right.
Okay, so one of the first things I did when I was hired on in August of this past year, one of the first things I did was change the mission statement just a little bit to reflect more of what the veterans agent does, because it's not always just the Chapter 115 benefits, but it's also VA and a few other things. So I set myself up with some goals and objectives. Obviously, these don't encompass everything. But the first goal I had was Chapter 115, to get to know Chapter 115. It's a pretty extensive document that we're required to follow. So the objective of the first one is to provide town and state financial support for those qualified. And so what I mean by that is there are funds that we provide them, but it doesn't mean it's just state. Sometimes we will help a veteran out, or a widow or widower, child, whatever it may be, go through the VA system as well. I'm a source with a lot of other sources behind myself, but at the same time, my responsibility kind of ends there. We push them through the system, but we also get veteran service officers on board who could represent them in a court of law. So 1.2 provides state and federal medical support for those qualified, and I mean by that is again the VA system and some other things, some of the benefits that we do provide, just not other benefits, but we're also talking fuel, we're talking the pharmacy, stuff like that. We reimburse them. So that's what I mean by that. 1.3 is ensure financial accuracy, both recipients and the town. I think one of the worst things I can do is shortchange a veteran or shortchange the town. So 75% of that money that we give comes back from the state to the municipality. 25% obviously.
Is ours.
Is ours, yes, sir. And then 1.4 is offer guidance and support to those veterans and family members who seek VA matters. And that was part of the mission statement, was to help them out. Obviously, that is not, it's part of my job. It's not all of my job. But as a veteran, I'll help any veteran that comes through that door, widow, widower, family member, whatever it may be. Let's see if I had anything else. I will say, to go back to ensure financial accuracy, we've worked pretty well with the treasurer so far. Jillian and Cheyenne have really helped me out quite a bit, as we played a little bit of catch-up because of the loss of the last veterans agent. But I will say Mr. Roberts out of Southbridge, who's the regional director, has really helped me out quite a bit. We can see the same screen, we can figure out who these individuals are, and it's been really good. One thing that we did change, though, is I have right now all the veterans or widows, children, whatever it may be, coming to see me before they pick up their check. They just don't go down to the treasurer's office, you just don't mail them or whatever it may be. They come see me face to face, or I go to their house if they're homebound, so I can ensure that all the paperwork required is given to them, and then we're fulfilling our requirements as a town to the state. Number 2, communication. That's one thing that I found out from, I live in Southbridge, and we rebuilt our Veterans Council there. Communication was key, and the communication issue, I wanted to make sure that they're aware that I'm here. I'm here for them 24/7, and that means I give them my cell phone number and all that kind of stuff. So I get a lot of phone calls just from veterans alone, asking questions, setting up meetings and all that kind of stuff, because even though I'm there only Tuesday and Thursday from 9 to 12, physically, I'm always available to them, even on the weekends. And a lot of times, it's just me, as a veteran. The other part, 2.2, is to begin, grow, and enhance the communication skills. So social media, I've worked with the town manager, assistant town manager, to work that through so we can provide them a little bit more information, not only just to veterans, but family members of veterans that may need some help. The third goal was parades and ceremonies. So one thing I'm trying to work with right now is the posts that we have in town. So be it the VFW, American Legion, the Guard, all that kind of stuff, trying to work with them so one cohesive unit. That way we can have better parades. We can bring more people out there. We can let them know what's going on and communicate with the town. And then the last one was professional growth. Obviously, I still have to get my veterans agent certification. I have 12 months to do that. I'll have that done before the summertime, no problem. But we did play a little bit of catch up because of the loss of the last veterans agent. And then weekly, we have a meeting with the state. I tried to attend on Wednesday, and it's online. All right. I can't see that far away. Well, okay, so the salary, I kind of took a look at FY20 all the way to FY23. Obviously, self-explanatory. I don't get a pay raise or anything like this year, this coming year. So it's the math is for itself. When it comes to services and supplies, the professional services, that $8,000 or that $8,500 that the town manager is recommending, is from Mr. Roberts from Southbridge. So I'm pretty sure you're aware that we have a
Shared.
a shared agreement. And right now, he not only covered Oxford, but he's covering Auburn right now too as well. I don't know if you're aware, the veterans agent there just passed away. And then the veterans benefits itself. So I took a look at this. I also knew that Social Security increased by 5.69%, so I took that into a factor. And I pulled up the documentation from this last fiscal year. And FY21
Yeah.
came pretty close to that 176, very close to it. And then I noticed they readjusted in FY22. Right now, based off the numbers that I do have, we're about 72, $2,000 we have spent. That's up to December 31st. So, but each month it can change. Depends on if I get a new veteran in or not at the last possible second. And under we're approximately 20 clients per month. So back in 21, on an average, we had, I think it was 19, yeah. 19 clients and approximately 2 funerals per year. FY22, right now, we average about 17 clients. But I will tell you how fast that switches. We just had a veteran that passed away. Within that same day, we gained a veteran from Worcester. So we can gain a veteran or 2 veterans or widows or widowers, whatever it may be, within a matter of 24 hours. The burials itself can range from $4,000 to $5,000 each. So it can increase really, really fast. And obviously that's based on their income. And then when it comes to supplies and miscellaneous, you know, we're talking about purchasing flags. One thing Oxford does is they leave flags out all year long. So I know a lot of other towns do not, but Oxford does. So we have to take that into account when we order and purchase flags. And education and dues pretty much stay the same. Everything underneath the education and dues we still utilize. I will say the training in the fall was online. I couldn't attend because by the time I came aboard, it already passed on. So I'm expecting it to be in person this year, so costs will be there. The Veterans Information Service is just nothing more than a kind of like a newspaper article or newspaper that I post up on our court board, and it gives all the VA information, the state information, any laws for veterans that they had passed recently. And the Massachusetts Veterans Association, a lot of training that does happen there, including the Worcester County Veterans Annual Dues. I think that's it. One thing I did want to mention is that the funerals, it doesn't happen all the time. It all depends, obviously, like I said, on the income of the individual or the family. But it doesn't, that money doesn't go to the veteran for the burial or funeral. You can see also dependents, children and stuff like that. Some funds can go to them as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep. It all depends. Again, it's a case-by-case basis, and we work closely with the directors and all that kind of stuff. Every town is different, though. In Oxford's the same way. That's really what I have right now. Is there any questions that I can?
Any questions of the committee? It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So you're running 20 basically right now, veterans, and it ebbs and flows.
It does. Right now, we're 17, but again, that can change tomorrow. Like I said, we received one from Worcester the same day that somebody passed on, and it just it works that way. And I took an average. I took a look at what we had on the fiscal year before, the last fiscal year, and it was averaging about 19. And that can change. That veteran or whoever it may be can receive $200, and they can a month to $1,500 a month. So it really it's all the math that the state gives us, and we just plug it in, and that's the information we receive.
And there's other monies, right, besides state monies, I mean, that there could be eligible for, right?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
And other programs. So,
Yeah.
and you're trying to make sure that no stone's unturned, that you plug them into what is available that they qualify for.
So when I bring a veteran in, let's say we just have one coming in tomorrow, it's not just filling out what we call VS-21. It's just saying what all the documentation, and they can provide it, and then it takes a couple hours just to fill that in. We're also talking about what was your discharge? We pull that information up. Are you seeing the VA right now? Are you receiving VA benefits? We had a veteran here this past year who was receiving help from the state and the town, and then started receiving VA benefits, which automatically took that individual off of our rolls. So it's always something. We'll give the senior center helps me out. Laura, Miss Wilson, she really helps out quite a bit. From walkers to just going to visit a veteran. So, you know, sometimes they just don't qualify for the town, but they may qualify for the VA, or, you know, we find there's a lot of Vietnam veterans are kind of finally coming forward because it's more acceptable now than it was 50 years ago to receive any type of benefits. So we're just trying to cover all of our bases with these individuals.
And you're working with the Post, too? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, I am right now. I do know the manager over there. I haven't got a chance to go over there in the evening when they're always available, but we're trying to push information out. It could be from, they've actually reached out to me as well to help out with their handicap, accessible wheelchair and stuff like that. So, building that trust and confidence in each other, I think, is going a long way. And I think the intent here is to make sure that they have a point of contact with the town
Right.
and is willing to support them.
Well, privacy and pride's a big issue when it comes to some of the vets. They don't,
Yeah.
there's a need, but privacy and pride, not wanting to take it, in their minds, partake, they wait, bringing them forward, going out and doing an outreach program to bring them on board so they can get the benefits they justly earn and deserve. That's like pulling teeth sometimes.
It took a long time for me,
Yeah.
and I'm a young one.
So out of curiosity, because you said approximately 20, and I know you mentioned, was it in 21 you had 19, right now you're at 17.
We're on average 17, yes, ma'am.
Do you ever have like month to month higher than 20? I just would be interested to see on a kind of month to month basis, honestly, to see the flux.
Since I have been there, no.
Okay.
And that's only just been a short period of time. But as I went back into history, they did have 21.
Okay.
So once you hit that level, and you're obviously watching the numbers and how it's going to work out, you have to communicate with the town itself,
Right.
with the town staff.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I think we're in a good area where we added in enough to just in case scenarios,
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously to change up the possible increase for the increase for Mr. Roberts out of Southbridge, and so we kind of, everything's they're coming out with new things all the time from the state, and we're trying to keep up. Just I think like anything is now that COVID, the pandemic itself they're moving forward.
So you're looking at over 22, you're looking at $6,308 or 2.7% increase.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. It's not a lot, but it seems like it's tight, and you seem like you're there, and you're trying to catch stuff up and bring people forward with some of the stuff that you just started or inherited.
And they're not always looking for the town benefits, like I said earlier. They're
Looking for other
they're looking
support.
for other support.
VA,
Yes, sir.
yeah.
And that's always the best way to go if we can do that.
VA, yeah.
Oh yes, and specifically the medical.
All right, any other questions, Dave? No? Well, thanks, Dave.
Thanks, sir.
Welcome
Appreciate it.
aboard.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Next item is the DPW. Jarrett, I see you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Evening.
Thank you for having me. I'll just get settled here quickly. Perfect. So my name's Jared Duval. For those of you who don't know me, or maybe watching and who do not know me, I'm the town's Department of Public Works Director. And very pleased tonight to present the fiscal year 2023 budget. So without further ado, so our agenda for tonight, starting with the purpose. Why am I here? Why are we here? The purpose is to gain support for our recommended 23 budget, FY23 DPW budget. So I'll start with just an overview of our department, as I like to do since my first presentation last year, just to give people a sense of what falls under our umbrella, and then delve into the operating budget, and then drill down into the municipal utilities budget, sewer, water, fuel, and I'd ask if possible if we could hold questions till the end, but again, I'm going to try to keep it as high level as possible through the presentation. There's a lot of ground to cover. I'd be happy to cover any detail questions that you have at the end as well. So I'd like to also take the opportunity just to remind folks of our mission here at DPW. This was something that, as Dave had kind of said, he revamped his coming in this year. I had done sort of my same approach as I came in last year. So I won't read the whole thing, but just paraphrasing, basically our mission and vision is to provide essential service to the town and care for the community's built environment so that we may enrich the lives of those who live, work, and visit in Oxford. So that's sort of the short form version of our mission statement here. And speaking of the responsibilities under DPW's purview and touching on really what we do as a collective here, it's 31 full-time equivalents and some seasonal laborers, seasonal help. And really you can see here, we've got a pretty vast portfolio of town assets that, we're responsible for planning, designing, constructing, maintaining, operating, from everywhere from a sprawling drainage system, including 2,000 drainage structures and several miles of drainage pipe, from 30 municipal buildings totaling 600,000 square feet of floor space, 8 bridges, 2 dams, hundreds of acres of open space to care for. It all falls on the backs really of 31 full-time equivalents. So I'm always impressed by the work that our folks do on a day in and day out, season after season, for such a vast portfolio once again. And it's through this budget, that we really facilitate that care and can care for all of these assets. And just a demonstration of how our organization is broken up at the moment, those 31 full-time equivalents. It's across 7 operating divisions. Our administration and engineering division is one, facilities maintenance division, our sewer division, highway division, parks and cemetery, forestry, and our fleet maintenance division. So what are the goals of our FY23 budget? Simply put, it's to facilitate our mission. It's to provide essential service, support transparency and accountability to committees, both committees, the public, support other departments in their missions, enhance town infrastructure, that's to keep it safe or make it safe, sustainable, aesthetic, support our ability to respond to emergencies, particularly weather-related emergencies, invest in our people and make sure that they're retaining or acquiring licensures, the professional development they need to provide the utmost service to the town. And really to round things out, it's to make Oxford an even better place to live, work, and play. And I'd be remiss to not mention that we'd continue our grant pursuits just to supplement or offset the costs in our budget so that we can accomplish even more this coming fiscal year. So this is kind of a high-level budget overview of the sort of distinct budgets that fall under DPW's umbrella, basically. I'll drill down into more detail as we kind of proceed here and discuss really sort of the specifics as to the changes. But starting at the top with the Public Works, the operating budget, you'll see FY23, the manager recommendation over the FY22. It's a $187,000 or so increase in the tune of just over 5.5%. Going down to the sewer enterprise fund, just about a $22,000 increase, a near 5% increase over the FY22 appropriation. Municipal utilities, the fuel budget has increased $15,000, just over 10%. And again, we'll talk about that a little later. And then as a first, at least for myself in this presentation, it was including the water enterprise and hydrants budgets, just being something that's akin obviously to DPW and what we do. It only made sense that we present on that as well. So the hydrant budget's level funded from FY22, and the water enterprise fund was reduced nearly $8,000 to about 8%. So starting with the Public Works, the operating budget, I've got it broken down here basically by division and service area. This is not just the 7 divisions that I just spoke to. I've included conservation here, and I also show just a line for capital outlay to show a change there. That's for any items $25,000 or less that wouldn't be in the CIP, basically. So again, I'm going to go through each one of these division service areas, but this is just a nice sort of overall look at our Public Works operating budget. As far as capital goes, the reduction there, the $11,000, that was for an FY22, the carbuncle aeration system at Carbuncle Pond to try to combat algae blooms there. So that's since been installed, that work is done. We did have a couple of requests for capital outlay in FY23, but they were not able to be funded. That was for a shade structure at Rule Field at the concession stand, and then a dump trailer for the Cemetery and Grounds division. just for hauling leaves. But it was not able to be funded, understanding this priorities across divisions, or not even divisions, the departments, really, right? So just wanted to point out that, because I'm not going to go, I didn't have a separate slide for capital outlay going forward. This is just another demonstration here of how our operating budget is sort of distributed across those divisions. It's a just over $3.5 million recommended budget for FY23. Again, $187,000 or so increase over FY22, and you could just show it just shows again how that budget is distributed across service areas. Facilities being one of the biggest divisions, obviously with the portfolio that we have, 30 municipal buildings, obviously between the staff and contracted services, we want to continue our high-level service there since we've inherited that department. And then again, administration engineering, I'll go through each one of these in just a moment here. So starting with the administration and engineering division, I like to include the goals here, just of each, just to convey that to both the committee and the public. Our objective in the administration engineering division is to provide effective leadership, sound personnel, and fiscal management and engineering services to support the department's overall mission and to support other departments as well through technical services that we provide. So I've broken out in the table here just between salaries and then services and supplies. Again, if you've got any detailed questions, I'd be happy to answer those at the end, or if you have to interject, that's perfectly acceptable. That's too okay as well. Excuse me. So I just want to mention too, the administration engineering division. What are we responsible for in particular? And that's administering our work order, our permit programs, training and safety programs for the whole department. It's technical review of public and private development through our engineering arm and through the work of our conservation agent, project manager, myself. It's development of bid documents for construction, making sure that we're upholding Massachusetts procurement laws, ensuring regulatory compliance with all pertinent federal, state, local regulations, and then the planning and implementation of a near $10 million capital improvement plan. That all falls under administration engineering's umbrella. So as far as salaries go, and this will be sort of a common theme going throughout the budget here, in terms of the cost of living adjustment, I'm sure you've heard it from other departments as well. There's a 3% COLA included in the pay plan this year. There was not one the previous year, so really it's kind of a 1.5% or so over the past couple of years. That's accounted for. We have three folks including myself, in the administration engineering division that are due for biannual merit increases, and then all 6 are subject to merit increases per the DPW pay plan and that cost of living adjustment. We're also moving the junior clerk's hours from 30 up to 35 hours, back to pre-COVID figures. She'd be the last one, to get her hours restored. We wanted to do it last year, and it wasn't feasible, unfortunately. As far as services and supplies go, it's been a nominal increase, basically an offset there between a reduction for radio repairs, heating fuel, and cleaning supplies, which were both kind of moved into the facilities budget, or the facilities area of the DPW budget. And then we had to increase the electricity line. We did that based on historical expenditures. So a really nominal increase, but that's because of the offset between those couple lines there. So overall, it's an approximately 3.75% increase in this division's budget over FY22, or $24,000 and $24,526. So moving on to the highway division, through the leadership of our operations manager, Steve Esposito, our working foreman, Jim Esposito, the goal is to effectively maintain the town's public right-of-way assets. That includes streets and sidewalks, just to name a couple, and to provide safe, efficient use of those assets by all. We're talking about 90 plus miles of public roadways, 13 miles of sidewalk, sprawling drainage system. Again, I kind of spoke to that in the beginning of the presentation. 8 bridges, just to name a few of those assets. The highway division also serves as the town's construction crew, and that could be for projects across DPW divisions or across departments. You may see them working on a road one day, they may be working in a park, erecting a playground the next day. They could be working at the bandstand, constructing or helping to construct a handicap ramp there. So they wear many hats. As far as salaries go, there was a near $18,000 increase there, 5.26% over FY22, again for salary wage increases per the 2021 DPW pay plan when that was restructured, and a cost of living adjustment. That's for 6 full-time equivalents within that division. And then really one of the sort of the biggest increases in certainly this division's budget, but in the budget overall, was a near $64,000 increase, and that was for the annual debt service for the equipment leases that were authorized at special town meeting in October 2020. The goal was to ultimately fund those annual lease payments out of the operating budget. We had prepped the budget last year. We got halfway there basically to cover those annual payments. Year 1 and 2 payments, if you recall, those were appropriated at town meeting, so those are already covered. This will now bring us up to full funding at $130,000 to fund those lease payments from years 3 out to year 7, basically. We have a 7-year term on a couple of the larger pieces of equipment.
And then 5 on some of the smaller.
5 on a couple of the smaller ones that'll drop off, and those payments will become much less, which will free up money in the budget, hopefully for other leases going forward to restore our fleet. And then there was a $5,000 increase to the road maintenance line in an effort to, and we can get into more detail, I've got all the detail sheets here, really the goal of which is to try to do more work internally. We're working on plans now to see if we can, and I know, Mr. Chairman, we had talked about this probably at the last budget meeting, the goal of bringing in some of our larger equipment. One of the least pieces of equipment is a 10-wheel dump truck to try to do maybe some paving in-house, rent some equipment, use our own internal labor on the right candidate streets, to make some improvements. With respect to the snow and ice division's budget, the goal is to effectively and efficiently respond to winter storm events so we can provide safe roadway and sidewalk conditions for public safety departments and the public at large. Again, it's a coordinated response on 90-plus miles of roads, nearly 5 or 5-plus miles of private ways that the selectmen have authorized town resources to plow and salt through a policy that was approved, I believe it was in 2018 now, and then also the snow removal on 13 miles of sidewalk. These folks are on call 24/7, so what you'll see here actually is a result of that and a result of some of the rate increases that I discussed so far. There was a $10,000 recommended increase to the salary line, and that is for winter overtime. Down in services and supplies, this is where we have a couple line items to pay for either private contract plows for their service during the winter months. And we also we have a winter maintenance line which could cover anything from replacement plow blades during the winter to our treated salt that we put down on the roads. So there was a $6,560 increase there proposed, and that was really due to an increase in the contract snowplow rates that we increased actually this fiscal year in an effort to be more competitive with surrounding towns, really with the state in general. I'm sure most of you may have heard, leading into this winter, it was very hard to find private plowers, and some of the rates were just really exorbitant. I know that out in Watertown, specifically as you got towards in the greater Boston area, Watertown I think was paying over $300 an hour for an equipment operator, for a loader operator. We're not paying nearly that, but we did increase the rates a couple dollars across the board depending on what size of truck you had, what size plow, up to a loader or a backhoe, whatever our private plow contractors are using. So that explains the increase there. We actually added a private plow as well, although that's part of the increase, but we also eliminated a loader rental that we traditionally had used for the past several years down at the highway garage during winter to help load salt. So we built a ramp down there that helps us load the salt with some of the equipment we already have, because different people are loading trucks and people have different licenses, right, to operate different equipment. So We're not putting people in a piece of equipment that they're not licensed to operate. But we need to load trucks, but we need to load them. So that's why we built the ramp. We eliminated, that rental cost, and we were able to add a private plow to our ranks to hopefully bolster our response during the winter months here. So moving to the facilities maintenance budget. Through the leadership of our facilities maintenance director, Mike Lupus, his staff, the goal is to provide operative maintenance and management of buildings and associated systems to protect town investments and provide safe, functional spaces for the public, students, and employees. And this is, again, I had mentioned it before, 30 municipal buildings. It's over 600,000 square feet of floor space. So it's quite a portfolio of buildings that just a division of a few folks ultimately cares for. We have contracted services, obviously, that we rely on too. But through this division, we're doing, I believe it was over 1,800 preventative and repair work orders last year alone. And that number keeps growing year after year and has grown substantially since DPW's inherited facilities. And I think that's just a testament, to Mike, his hard work, the division's hard work, and then just being involved and being able to collaborate with DPW as a whole. So we're accomplishing a lot there. And you'll see an increase to the salaries line here. Is broken down. There's a $7,500 or so increase where our aim is to create a facilities coordinator position, and we have somebody within the department that's been a faithful, dedicated, skilled employee for several years and has really been given some stretch assignments over the past few years and is really working outside of their job description currently. And we think that with this new position, which includes part of that increase is moving this position. What they're doing now is 35 hours, moving it to 40 hours a week. So that's part of the increase in salary, but is also a step increase as well, based on the additional duties. It'd be someone moving from a clerk position into a facilities coordinator role, which we anticipate would really take a lead in managing, scheduling the 5 custodians across all of these 30 buildings, basically, and then just helping coordinate efforts with the with general planning. With outside contract help, basically, on smaller scale projects, because ultimately the facilities director, we have our general project manager in DPW. The more intricate projects, they'll take charge, but some of the day-to-day activities, just to provide an additional level of assistance to the facilities director. So that's part of the salary increase there. And then the remaining balance, $23,000 or so, is for the, again, salary wage increases per the DPW pay plan and the cost of living adjustment. That's for 7.5 full-time equivalents or so. There's been a nominal increase, again, to the actual services and supplies budget. That's due to a reduction in equipment maintenance, just looking at historical expenditures. We've trimmed that down a little bit, and that's equipment maintenance, but not on like large-scale building system equipment. That's on, hand tools type, that scale of equipment, small scale equipment. And then we did increase the supplies line. Just in general, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot going on in the world right now, but these are basically consumables, filters, belts, a lot of stuff like that, where we've seen an increase in price. So we're just trying to accommodate for that, basically, with the $3,000 increase. So with respect to our fleet maintenance division, through the expert management maintenance, we have 2 very skilled mechanics. It's ultimately falls on their shoulders. Our fleet superintendent, Mike Berg, our assistant fleet superintendent, Tom Berg. It's really their charge, to keep all of the town's fleet. And it's not just DPW's vehicles, it's police, it's fire, it's the Council on Aging, it's town hall vehicles. Keep them in service and on the road so that we can do our mission or complete our mission, and so other departments can continue theirs as well. So salary increases, again, with the common theme there. Wage increases, those are annual increases now, 2.5% to their wage, and then there's the cost of living adjustment factored in there as well. And then there's been a small increase to the fluid oil and lubricants line item, again, with these sort of general kind of consumables just increasing slightly. And looking again at, actual costs from previous years. But as Katie mentioned too, it's valuable certainly to look back, but with COVID, it kind of skews things a little bit, right? So, particularly with this division here, we had people working in and out for those couple of years during COVID, not putting as much wear and tear on vehicles, that sort of thing. So we see that, in FY21, the budget kind of reflected that. FY20, where probably we're closer to more normal pre-COVID conditions, I guess, so that, at least in terms of the fleet. So, but again, a $9,000 increase overall, near 3% over FY22. So here I've kind of lumped in the cemetery and grounds divisions, the forestry divisions, and then added conservation as its own little entity here. But essentially, I think the mission is pretty much the same for all of those. We're seeking to preserve, protect, maintain, enhance the town's natural resources, including public shade trees, the town's habitats, open space, and parks to encourage environmental stewardship, strengthen the community image, and enrich the lives of residents. And that's through our cemetery and grounds superintendent, Matt Benoit, his leadership, our tree warden, Wayne Burlock, and DPW's conservation agent, Judy Lochner. The salaries line is a proposed $27,463 increase, or 5.26%. Pay plan adjustments and cost of living, and then a $5,000 increase for seasonal laborers, namely because we increased the rates for them as well going back, and that was sort of in collaboration with the Human Resources Department, looking at what we had been paying, in previous years, not getting a lot of interest for these sort of seasonal, from spring through fall positions. So we increased the rates. We try to fill 3 positions, through spring or through from spring through summer, to help, namely with the cemetery and grounds division, although they can kind of float depending on how much work the cemetery and grounds division has on their plate. As far as services and supplies go, roughly $2,500 increase there proposed. There was a $1,000 increase for additional fertilizer and grub treatments. We treat basically all of the town's open space, the common, school grounds, cemeteries. We treat them with 4 different treatments really over the course of the fiscal year, between grub treatments early on and then a couple of fertilizer treatments. So making sure that we stay on top of that, because when we've cut that out of the budget or not stayed on top of that, you end up losing fields, and then it costs that much more to bring them back. So we're trying to avoid that and put money there. And then nominal increases, the balance of that, so $1,500 or so was sort of nominal increases to supplies, materials, small scale equipment rentals, and water usage for irrigation, to those lines. Now moving from the operating budget into a utilities budget, starting with the sewer enterprise fund. The sewer enterprise budget serves basically, or is to provide consistent service to about 420 customers. That's nearly 1,000 residents or so. I'd like to just kind of lay out what our current rate structure is. I'll get into sort of the revenue and the sources there, but essentially the sewer enterprise fund is funded nearly all by usage fees that are quarterly. We bill quarterly for each resident or business their usage, and we bill a rate per 1,000 gallons of sewage that is collected, basically. So our current rates, we have 2 distinct service areas. We have a north service area that's essentially from the high school heading north, some sewer facilities on Leicester Street, Route 20, Fair Pond Village, and that is ultimately collected there, pumped through Auburn, and then up to the Upper Blackstone Clean Water Facility in Millbury. That rate is at currently $12.35 per 1,000 gallons, and it's been that way since fiscal year 20. The South Service rate, which is essentially from IPG through Dudley into Webster for treatment at their treatment facility, it's been $16.86 per 1,000 gallons since FY16, when the Board of Sewer Commissioners, who is the Board of Selectmen, they decided that we should split the rates. That was something they wanted DPW to evaluate. We've been capturing enough revenue since that time where that rate is not increased. So our budget for FY23, looking at proposed FY23 rates, we were projecting revenue based on an increase or proposed increase to the North Service Area rate. from $12.35 per 1,000 gallons to $13.63. So just $1.28 per 1,000 gallons, or approximately a 10% increase. And that is first because of an increase in IMA fees since we've last increased and IMA is intermunicipal agreement. So because we don't have our own treatment facility, we rely on neighboring towns, Auburn, to transport the sewer to Upper Blackstone for treatment. So we pay IMA fees to Auburn for using their system, and then we pay Upper Blackstone for the ultimate treatment of that effluent or that sewage. Same in the South Service area. We pay the town of Webster to transport and collect and treat our sewer in the South Service area. So the IMA fees have increased both in the North and South Service areas, although South Service area is generating enough revenue at the current rate to absorb those increases. North Service area is not. And what we're also trying to do here is bolster our retained earnings as well. So it's a combination of covering the increase in IMA fees, but also bolstering retained earnings so that we may either program that for capital improvements to the system or put it into a stabilization fund for a rainy day, basically, given any uncertainties. So I'll talk a little bit more about the proposed rate afterwards. I'll go through our connection fees, which are also demonstrated here. These were changed, I think, back in 2019, increased from $375 per connection, which is, if you looked at any surrounding town, we were nowhere close to where we should be with connection permit fees. So it's $3,000 per connection currently for a gravity connection to a residential property, or from a residential property to the main. And then for a residential pressure connection, it's $1,500 per connection, and it's less because we require an engineered plan for that sort of thing, because we're talking a pump system. So we want a stamped engineered design that we require. So we're kind of offsetting the cost to the homeowner in that case, because that plan costs quite a bit of money. So we charge a smaller connection fee. And then for commercial properties, it's a $5 per gallon of Title V design flow. Title V relating to typically generating usages for septic design, but that's sort of customary on the sewer side as well. So as far as the sewer enterprise, on the expenditure side of the budget, the FY23 recommended budget is just over $462,000. It's a near $22,000 increase, or almost 5% over FY22. And just a demonstration here of, between our operating revenues and operating expenses. As you can see, on the left, the lion's share of our revenues come from usage fees, 93%. Other fees that we collect, that's both connection permit fees or drain layers licenses on an annual basis. That number could grow. I've got it noted in here in the presentation. Revenues could be higher if we get sort of a medium to large scale commercial project, if they apply to connect. Typically the anticipated sewage flows, the estimates could be thousands of gallons. So, for instance, we had IPG connect the building last year. It was the old Fabrico building, and I think they had an estimate of over 9,000 gallons per day. So times $5 per gallon, that was a near $50,000 connection fee. So if we get anything like, and it may seem sort of egregious, and we're hitting the businesses hard there, but that's pretty customary from town to town, and that was all research as part of that new connection permit structure, basically, or connection fee structure. And then betterments for Beverly and Leicester Street, extensions there, and interest, any generated interest. It really is, that's the full picture for how we generate our revenue. On the operating expenses side, again, over half of our expenditures go to those intermunicipal fees. So that's to Webster, Auburn, and the Upper Blackstone Clean Water Facility. Purchase services is both for water and then for flow metering. And then you could see, I spoke about the justification for raising rates, and this will be something that, should the budget get approved following town meeting, we would bring that, we need to bring it to the Board of Sewer Commissioners for a rate hearing, so that would certainly be the intent. But you see right now, the budget is about 5% to system maintenance, which is both the piping and maintaining our sewer pump stations. it's only a mere 5% of the budget. So if we can increase those retained earnings, we can start making capital improvements. Our system, we have the benefit of it being fairly new for the most part, both north and south. It was really constructed in sort of the early 2000s, so not an old system by any stretch of the imagination there. But we don't want to defer maintenance because then we'll be worse off going forward. It's also worth noting that going back to the IMA fees, we're actually currently in the negotiations with Webster, with Auburn. Our terms, the IMA term in Webster is 5 years, in Auburn it's 3 years. Those have since expired. We've actually did an extension of 1 year in Auburn last year just because of myself coming in. There was new personnel there. There was COVID implications. So the final fee structure is not yet been determined. So we've accounted for that in our projected IMA fees here, but they could be more. So again, if we end up going forward with a rate increase, we're saying that it could be appropriated or moved for retained earnings or sewer stabilization. It could also end up being accommodating those uncertainties in the new IMA fees if they go up more than we anticipate. So some of the key changes, the usage flows that we use to generate our projected revenues, we've increased those to be closer to near pre-COVID conditions. So last year, the budget, we had decreased expenditures because we were expecting a decrease in the usage flows and a decrease in the revenue that we were projecting. This year, we're still slightly conservative with those numbers, just looking at historical, looking beyond or prior to 2020 and 2021. But we're not quite, we don't want to quite put those back to where we were pre-COVID. We want to see how things kind of come out, this next fiscal year. But so that's kind of a key element there, plus the rate increase to the North Service area. So the increase in IMA fees was $10,000 just in the North Service area. What we're projecting to be $10,000, and again, we're justifying that rate increase to cover that, and then really for the first time, I think, sort of program in to try to bolster these retained earnings. Actually, try to build that into our budget. And again, we'll bring that before the Board of Selectmen ahead of the fiscal year in July, or the end of the fiscal year in June. There was increases on the expenditure side of $12,000 for electricity that serves our pump stations, for professional services and engineering, and then pump station equipment maintenance. And I had kind of alluded to before, we could see higher revenues if we get any sort of larger scale commercial projects connect, but it's too uncertain to really budget for that on the revenue side, in my opinion. Moving on to the water budgets, starting with the Water Enterprise Fund, and I know Katie's probably more in tune with some of the particulars here, so if I misspeak, Katie, please feel free to interject. But really with the Water Enterprise Fund, it's to cover debt service payments for the water tank and acquisition bonds. That was the acquisition back several years ago when I think the town was trying to take over the water system. And then the revenues are from Sutton Ave water tank lease, some betterments, and then just retained earnings that are appropriated to sort of balance that budget out. As far as the hydrants go, this is for maintenance and usage charges. That was level funded.
Pretty simple.
Okay. I believe last but not least, municipal fuel budget. So you'll see here a $15,000 increase over FY22, over 10%. Really, the manager in DPW, we kind of saw, even before a lot of the volatility or the crises really in Eastern Europe, it was a volatile market. The crude oil was at a 7-year high before Ukraine was invaded. I've got the fuel price, the Brent crude oil price here at $106 per barrel as of yesterday. That's been over $110 today. So there was volatility in the market anyways that we were trying to account for, and now with a lot of the geopolitical uncertainty with what's going on, we expect a continued rise in fuel costs. So we show a $15,000 increase. Hopefully that's sufficient because we'll certainly feel it. We'll feel it here too in Oxford. If things continue to rise, fuel costs typically don't go down too heading into the summer months. So even if it was under normal circumstances, we'd expect it to creep up. But that's justification for at least that $15,000 request. So that kind of concludes my presentation. In conclusion, I'd just like to thank the town manager, her office, thank Finance Director Katie McKenna, all the DPW team members that helped in the development of this budget. It's truly a collaborative effort with a budget of this scale and complexity. I'd like to extend my gratitude again to the men and women of our Public Works Department. It's really through their dedication, their skill, their hard work, that they put this budget into action. So I want to thank them for their hard work. They're the frontline faces of this department. So, and thank the public for their continued support, and thank the Finance Committee for the work that you do. Thank you.
All right, open up the questions for Jarrett. Anybody have questions?
I have a quick one, which was on the water budget. It looks like we don't have the fiscal '21 actual.
Yeah, we didn't have, I think, the fiscal '22, at least in the sheet that I received. I don't know, Katie, I don't know if you have some details on that, or?
I don't remember why we don't have it on there.
I think I got it printed here. Let me see, yeah.
That was for revenue.
That was the water enterprise, right? Or?
I think it was on the revenue side,
Yeah,
yes.
I just don't think the revenues were
Okay.
broken out enough to give you that. Or typically, we don't have the revenue broken out for actuals, just showing you what we're requesting based on what we have available. So the actuals are going to be different year to year based on the betterments and committed interest.
I saw you had on fuel, and I can't find it now. I don't know where I had it here. Like $2.87, Ron. You had it all broken down.
Yeah, that's the
On your
detail. I
usage?
mean,
Yeah, the
that
detail
seems-
there. Yeah.
And that seems pretty absurd, right? Considering what we're seeing
Well-
lately. I mean, we are also, I mean, it's, again,
You
we're
can add
looking.
$1.50 a gallon to each one of those and reformulate your budget without hesitation.
Of
We're going to be
course.
over $4 a gallon right now.
Of course, and we try to be conservative in the quantities too. We're looking at, that's one way. I mean, ultimately, whether we increase the quantity or increase the rate, the math works out the same, right? So, looking at the quantities, we try to account for some uncertainty there as well. Again, I think we had requested not much over 165,000 or so. Again, we've been fortunate. If you look at, again, FY20, FY21, we've not quite spent, close to what we're budgeting now. Obviously, that was a different time. It was COVID. Prices were different. So, yeah, there's a whole lot of uncertainty. It's not necessarily an easy thing to budget for.
I just
but
think I think you're being conservative. I think you need to
Yeah.
might want to relook at that. I don't know. I hate to say that, but even your fuel for heat and electricity, all those utilities are going to go up. I mean, when we think of oil, we don't really think of fertilizer and which goes into the farms, which goes into wheat, which goes into bread. So when you start paying $5 a loaf for a loaf of bread, everything translates to fuel. I mean, oil. We always think we go right to gas, but it's not gas. There's a lot of other things that come out of that. The other questions I had were the manager had you had professional fees and funds requested. There was a $44,000 difference between what you had requested and what the manager recommended.
Yeah, and if you just give me a moment, I can I'll
So we go
switch
back
to my
to let's see here.
detail sheets here.
Purchases of services under facility maintenance. What we requested was $199,400, and I have the detail for that. You've supplied us all the detail here on the sheets. What makes that up here? So I'm wondering. I'm looking down. Annual boiler treatment, $2,300, $7,000 for annual testing of school alarms, $10,000. Where are you going to cut that $44,000? You listed everything comes to $199,400. $109. Where are you going to cut that $44,000? We're not going to maybe check the generator repairs for $10,000? Are we going to cut? I mean,
Well,
I don't know. I don't get it.
Yeah, you
You're
can
very
see-
detailed, and I'm saying, okay, musical chairs here. Who's going to be left standing?
Exactly. It's not necessarily a give and take within the facilities division budget itself, right? Now that they're under the umbrella of DPW, it's a bottom line budget. So sometimes those overruns, and we've seen it, I've seen it in the year or so that I've been here already, we have spent, and I think it speaks to the fact that we're doing more work orders than ever since DPW's inherited facilities. I mean, you see the actuals spent, and it's well in excess, especially in that purchase of service line, because we can only do so much with the one or three facilities techs, really, right, that we have. We do as much internal work as we can, but ultimately we need to rely on outside contractors.
Right.
And what when we've had to do in a lot of cases is, we monitor the budget as we certainly throughout the year and as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year. And it's sort of a give and take. It really is. Some divisions within DPW end up having a surplus for whatever reason, and it sort of offsets.
These are all
those
specific contracts.
They
I mean,
are,
like
yeah.
automatic temperature control systems
Yep.
and service
A lo-
repairs,
a lot
adding
of-
chafing, $20,000.
That's right.
And
a
of
lot
course, all these outside services, everybody's raising their prices. I don't care if they're baking bread or
Yep.
fixing your car, their prices are going up.
No doubt. And a lot of these annual programs, they're going to happen nonetheless. And, I can't say right now where it's going to come from out of the budget, but at the end of the day, it is a bottom line budget, DPW. And we managed over the past, since FY '20, I would say, where we've kind of consistently spent at least 40,000 or so, I would say, over that line. If I don't have it right in front of me, right here.
Well, so, yeah, I was just gonna say, at that same, we see the fiscal year 2021, where we're spending quite a bit more
Right.
than we're currently budgeting for.
So we've kind of become
23.
accustomed to that, and we know that we've got work that we need
So
to
you're
do.
gonna,
and
you're gonna have to interdepartmental
Yes.
move the
And
musical
that's-
chairs, so it may come out of the administration department, it may come out of the highway department. If God is willing and Mother Nature's willing, it may come out of your snow and ice removal department.
It depends.
you
It
know.
depends on what kind of winter we have, certainly. Sometimes we have surplus.
We had a
in
good one
winter.
last year.
Yep.
We're not
Sometimes.
so far this year.
No, and salt went through the roof this year, too.
Salt's going up, right?
Because of the supply chain issues, so that we can't necessarily rely on any surplus in the snow and ice budget. But, again, my job, right, is to develop the budget in consultation and collaboration with the finance director, the manager. Before I submit it to them, it's develop a budget that I think's reasonable and proper, but we're kind of doing that in a vacuum, right? Because understanding that there's other departments, there's other priorities. So we've asked for that amount based on the historical expenditures, but I understand that it's just not feasible to fund
Well,
what we ask within the budget. So we do an internal, our own internal accounting to make it.
so
to
you'll
make it
move
work
it,
and
you'll
make-
just slide it up or down, which way?
That's really what it comes down to, yeah.
Your total salaries requested were, you had requested 2,323,552.3, and you're at, and manager approved 2,162,000 for an increase of 119,497 or 5.8%. That's on the total salaries, all the departments. I'm looking at the big picture.
Yep,
You had requested on supplies and services, 1,607,854. The manager approved 1,362,300. So there's a big difference there, about 200 and something $1,000. But the increase over 22 at 1,282,640 is still a $79,660 increase, or 6.2%. So we got two increases, one in salary of 120 roughly, 5.8%, one in supplies roughly of 180,000 basically, or 6.2%. But when you look at what you requested in both these categories, the number is significant. Now, I go back to salaries. You had requested a full-time junior civil engineer for $64,000. That didn't get funded. You have this part-time mechanic that you wanted for fleet maintenance for $21,000 or $22,000 roughly, and that didn't get funded. Down here on your light equipment, 7 full-time light equipment operators, you had requested $320,000. You got approved $277,000. So there was some stuff, I don't know what that shook out to, but
so,
there was a big difference there as far as what you requested and what got funded. just looking at
Yeah, I mean,
numbers here.
the overall request, right, was north of 3.9. And that's substantially more than what was appropriated in FY '22, obviously, so.
Yeah.
Again, it's requesting something that I think is reasonable and proper, and also. And
Was the
working with
number
Katie and-
different? Is it 7? Was it 6 before, was it an increase in salaries that made that difference between 320 requested? 320.
What it was an additional light equipment operator that we were looking
Okay.
for. So since we've inherited, and I think I spoke to this last year too, since we've inherited the school maintenance, the school grounds, we've basically been, and the staffing level in the cemetery and grounds division has been static. So the idea was, and what we're doing actually presently, is we have a light equipment operator that we're paying part of their salary. They're out on with a medical issue. We've brought in a temporary light equipment operator. So we're already sort of paying for not 1.5 additional light equipment operators, where this budget intended to cover that balance, so that if the individual comes back on medical, we can keep them, and then we can keep the temporary. Or if they don't, we can hire a replacement for that person if they don't come back. One of the particular temporary individuals we had hired on a temporary basis has a lot of tree work experience, has a lot of grounds maintenance experience. So the idea was that they would kind of float between the forestry division and the cemetery and grounds division. So that was adding approximately $50,000 or so for the salary for an additional light equipment operator.
Yeah, so if I take, all right.
That again, understanding that, we're not the only department. There was a lot of ask there. I wanted to throw in the junior civil engineer, the request for that, because I think there's certainly a need with the volume of work that we have, and I hopefully spoke to under the administration engineering division. I think there's certainly a need to have somebody that can not only help with project development, but also project oversight. We have a project manager that does that, but they can't be out in the field 100% of the time. They can't be in the office 100% of the time. We need, whether it's a junior level engineer, construction inspector, out there monitoring these private contractors as much as possible to make sure that they're upholding our quality standards and make sure that we're protecting the town's investment, whether it's a road project, drainage, whatever it may be. So I certainly think there's a need there, but understanding that, again, there's staffing needs outside of DPW, and that's all.
Right.
There's all been a collaborative sort of discussion about that and where priorities would fall this given fiscal year.
So if I take you requested in salaries, $2,323,553, approved $2,162,137. And if I take the 65 rounded up, and I take your 50,000 on that one extra light equipment operator, and I look at overtime, which you had requested on snow removal, 168, and she approved 150, and some of these other overtime, I get close to that, the 161 number on salary differences. So it's 2 people plus some overtime that she cut back on, as far as what you had requested, 18 in snow removal. The other thing I look at when I look at the other thing on supplies, and I just looking at this morning, and I'm saying, okay, you got a difference here on supplies requested of $1,607,854. She approved $1,362,300. The difference is $245,544. Services is $44,400. We just spoke of that right there. A lot of the stuff I noticed in Parks and Recreations had to do with trees, contract tree repair. You had requested 75. She approved 50. Tree replacement, you requested 10. She approved 7. Supplies and materials, you requested 9. She approved 5. Downtown beautification, you requested 19. She approved 10. Recreation, fertilizer, seed, flowers, you had requested 28,713. She approved 17. So when I'm looking at those numbers, I'm guessing, and I don't want to put words in yours or her mouth, that some of that stuff on beautification downtown, she's envisioning and hoping that there's, as in previous years, some grant monies to do some of these things that would not affect the budget.
Yeah, that's ultimately sort of to explain.
As opposed
a lot
to
of
taking the
just-
money out of the levy to do some of these things and on the beautification and stuff. And in prior years, she's been successful in garnering grant money to do those things, so it doesn't come out of the taxpayers' port, or the levy, I should say.
Yeah, no, that's certainly fair to say,
I'm-
Mr.
again,
Chairman. There's
I'm
also
guessing-
a difference too. One of the more sizable to make up the difference there was under administration, the professional services stormwater management line was requested at 124. It was funded at 80. I mean, that's, there's new requirements as we get further into our MS4 permit, state permit.
And some of the other big
Management.
numbers, some of the other big numbers are general maintenance, fleet maintenance. You had requested 157, she approved 135. Winter maintenance, you requested 208,500, she approved 190. So when I'm starting to look at these numbers and saying, where's the difference? That's where the numbers are, and I'm hoping, like you said, you can move stuff amongst the departments. So it can come out of highway, come out of snow, come out of services and administration, it come out of facilities. You can move it around within your, that's a lot to wiggle, though.
Well, I mean,
200 something thousand
We
dollars.
kind of have to anticipate doing it anyways, right? We never know what is going to happen in a given year. And with so much under our umbrella, I mean, again, it could be one bad winter that kind of sets the whole thing. We're on a different course now. Where now we have a deficit in our snow and ice budget, so we may have to.
Well, that's the
ease
one line
back
item
on
we
our-
can, that's the one
Yeah.
line item, the state lets you run it as deficit.
We can ease back on. No, we don't.
We normally, as a town, other towns don't. They just pick a number and figure it out. We try to do something that's reasonable based on history. We don't play with that number, so to speak, historically.
Ultimately, I mean, we drill into a lot of detail
Yes.
with the public works budget, but it's really is just a plan. It's a roadmap, and again, we don't know what we're going to encounter in a given fiscal year, so we always have to make those sort of internal adjustments as we go.
It's just a big number. That's
It's a big difference.
it's a big difference, and I hate to call it that, but it's $245,000 in supplies in amongst your departments that you had requested, and I'm assuming when you met with your department heads and you came up to these numbers. Now I know everything we're hoping. I just wish we were in better times. I mean, everything seems to be, inflation's going through the, and we don't have any contracts on any of these service agreements. We haven't locked any prices in, whether it's fuel or anything.
Not for fiscal year '23.
No, there's nothing. I mean, I don't think anyone in their right mind would offer that today, because I know I wouldn't. It's scary. I mean, obviously, we'll only be able to do what we can afford to do, and you can't do any more than what you have money to do. I don't know what if it comes to that with inflation, what's going to suffer going forward? Who's to say? But that's a big number, 245,000. That's all.
I agree, and again, just, looking at the total department request over, it was a substantial difference over '23, and it has been, for the past few years. But again, we're doing that in sort of a vacuum, like I said, until it gets to the folks like Katie and the manager. You have to take in the DPW budget, obviously, within the context of the whole town. So this is something in developing the budget, we're looking at, I don't want to call it, a wish list, but trying to get all of our goals and sort of wishes into our budget in a particular fiscal year, but realizing that a $500,000 increase from one year to the next is probably not realistic, right? So, again, it's our job, my job, to ask, and advocate, and ultimately work within the budget that we have. And I'm confident that with the budget that we've got before you tonight, that we can continue to provide the essential service we
like-
need to. And
You got 120 increase in payroll, and you've got 80 basically increase in services.
in a big portion of that is the equipment lease too.
Yeah,
is bolstering
right,
for the
that hit
equipment
us,
lease,
which we said right up front. We took it off the capital program, and they said it's going to be part of your operating budget.
Right.
And to be fair to your department, we got to call that out. That's not something you did, that's something we did. by saying we can get more equipment if we lease it, and then we'll put it as a lease. So we got more pieces of equipment for the community. We got great rates on it. We leased it for 7 or 5 years. We could have gotten 2 pieces or 3 pieces of equipment. We ended up getting, what is it, 5 or 7? Forget. 5.
We did, yeah.
So we picked up 2 extra pieces of equipment, and we got favorable rates. I don't know where the rates are going to be now, but we're locked in there. So, but that came back, that 64,000 came back to haunt us, because that's where that number
Well,
came in.
as far as fleet goes, though, I mean, going forward, we've got the street sweeper lease is in year 5 in fiscal year '23, so that'll be falling off. That's $47,000 a year or so.
It kind of
So now that
consumes
it's-
itself. That street sweeper beats itself to death,
It
basically.
will, and then the question is with some of the equipment like that experiences more wear and tear, you'll have equity in that machine, certainly.
Certain, yes.
You want to give it back.
Residual,
And,
right.
yeah, and.
It's great for parking lots, but not for roads, right?
Yeah, and get a new one and at a lower rate, and then you free up some of that,
Right.
that money in our budget to go lease something else. And that just means that, we're not asking the capital plan. We can start a program, a sustainable program within the budget to replace and upgrade our fleet. So, ultimately, I think it's a positive thing, certainly, that it's there.
Well, you guys do everything from putting playground equipment together to mowing lawns to fixing to changing light bulbs. So 32 people, that's you cover a lot, and the community should be aware of that and know that how much you do within the community, maintaining all the facilities and everything. So it's daunting job. And the roads by themselves is a daunting job, and the condition because of the age. Being a historical community is great, but when you inherited roads that were conceived in 1713 and bridges that were built in the 1700s, it takes the bloom off the rose, so to speak, when you have to maintain that. All right, any other questions of the committee, of Jarrett?
I have a question, Jeff. Just
Sure.
a quick one on the water enterprise.
Sure.
The water tank lease as a revenue, so do we lease it back to Aquarian? Is that how that works? That's our tank and we lease it out? It's on the revenue line.
I think so.
Is it, I was hoping
I think
Katie would
that's-
address, is it?
This was all before our time.
Is
Yeah,
it
I think-
town property? Is that part?
Yeah,
It says we have a debt service on it,
we built it,
and then we lease it, so I assume
Yeah.
it must be to Aquarian.
An agreement.
we have an agreement.
Yeah.
And I think, was it,
To give you the specifics, it's not
and back in
So
the
I
day
just
on the
did-
other end, a couple water tanks, that's the one in Sutton that we built and owned on Sutton Ave. Then there's the other one on the north end, that Javis
correct.
Trucking wanted water, and they spent
Yeah, I remember that,
55,000 of their money, not our money,
This is
and
just
they
one
built a
Sutton
water
Ave.
tank, and I think we were leasing both of those to Aquarian, I think,
This
at
is
some
just the one
point.
on Sutton Ave. This
Yeah.
is an agreement, this was a recent agreement,
Yeah.
I think within the last
Yeah.
15 years.
So, and at some point, it's leased to own, so when the lease is up, it accrues to Aquarian, of that tank.
That's my recollection too,
Yeah.
but I didn't want to speak without having it in front of me.
I remember, my memories, but yeah, I'm going back a few years, but at the end of the lease, they'll own those towers, those tanks, when they're done leasing them. I'll say I'm 90% sure of that, but I'll leave 10% door open on that one.
Braver than I.
But that was the way it was written. I'm going back to Joe Zaniski and,
It would be good to know when that falls off the budget then, from
yeah,
a revenue
yeah,
perspective.
yeah. I noticed the water is
I have
down.
a spreadsheet on that, so I know when everything falls off.
Yeah,
Sure,
there is
I'm
a,
sure,
there is a
yeah.
borrowing spreadsheet on that, but I noticed the water usage is less.
Yeah,
And I know the hydrants were always, I can remember when the hydrant fee was 85,000 a year. Okay, I'm dating myself a little bit here. But actual, it was what is it at here? Hydrants were 146 and 21, actual, 146, 825. We budgeted 165 and 22, and we're budgeting 165, so it's not going up. So there may be some money there on the water fees. Municipal water hydrants, I'm looking at the hydrants
Yeah, we don't have the actual for.
We don't have the actual, but
Yeah, so the hydrants, you have the actual, the water
Yeah.
enterprise, you don't have the actual.
that's the water, the water enterprise, yeah. Went down from 97 budgeted or whatever it was, and, well, actual was, we don't know.
So the debt service is going down on the water enterprise, so that's why the budget's gonna go down, because it's just debt service.
Just the
And
debt,
the revenues are fixed. We don't have any user fees, so you don't need to look at what it was in the
Yeah, it's
prior
a-
year, because
it's a-
it's not a consideration for your budget, they're fixed.
it's a zero. Whatever it is,
It is
the
what it
fee's
is.
covered. You're right, the fee's covered, it cancels it out.
Right, well, and actually, they don't cover it, so we have to appropriate retained earnings. So it's kind of a defunct.
24,500 we appropriate retained earnings, right? About 25,000, that's what it
It
has here.
varies year to year, so this
Uh,
year is gonna be different. Last year was higher, this will be it'll get a little less and less. And then when some of the lease drops off, it'll go up for a couple of years.
Right.
But we have enough retained earnings to cover it all.
And we're trying to do that with a sewer account, which is what you were alluding to, put some money into retained earnings. So I saw the sheet here on, I had a hard time following it, because it's,
Did that all go?
It did.
My
I saw
mess.
that.
yeah.
It's a lot of math.
It's a lot of,
Oh, when I went back
you
into it a
gave
few
us,
weeks
you
later.
gave us ample data,
Oh,
believe
yeah.
me. And I
played on
spent most of the morning trying to
my
figure
headache.
out the sewer sheet here, and I'm saying to myself, because you have a bunch of,
Probably, yeah, maybe.
and then I know
should've
you're
broke that
talking
out,
about
though.
inter-basin transfer, and I was talking about, well, how does that gonna affect, volume and stuff? If we, if we have the ability to handle more effluent, then how does that if we don't raise our fees, and the fees aren't all adequate enough, be careful what you wish for. Now we can do more, but we're not getting enough, so now that deficit becomes a bigger number. Am I?
Yeah, the Interbasin Transfer Act, that's a sort of separate regulatory
Right.
consideration, right? And we may have talked about
Here
that
it is.
before. So we're working through the state's sort of informal application process now to expand our threshold, the threshold of what we can send through Auburn and up to Upper Blackstone out of the French River watershed. So we don't know yet, but that will mean,
But
that'll
you
give us
need-
the ability to have more people connect and to contribute more sewage to the system and
But you
collect
better
that
have your
revenue.
fees right, because if you start increasing and your fees are short,
That's right.
and and you open up the spigot, so to speak, for more volume,
Exactly.
you're gonna have a
So
bigger deficit.
We're billed on an annual basis by Upper Blackstone, based on the amount of flow we send. And then in Auburn, we're billed for personnel. We rent their vac truck on occasion if we need to pump down a wet well for maintenance. So we're billed for that. We're billed a quarterly, all the Auburn bills are quarterly. So there's a quarterly flow charge per gallon, and then a fixed fee, a fixed charge per quarter. So like Mr. Chairman said, it's looking at, we'll have new revenue with increased flow, but essentially it's
if-
gonna
if-
offset the cost for
Right.
transportation and treatment.
You need to make
basically.
sure
We're
that
gonna
you're-
get billed
you're-
according to that, so.
Covering that, plus adding money to retained earnings.
That's right.
So I was looking at these rates, I said, just on the IMA, it said north was, what'd it be, $2.89, $12.89, and then south was gonna be $16.86. And then I started to lose me here, because then I saw all these other new rates, and they were less. One was $12.44.
It's like, I think he's doing different scenarios.
Yeah.
Doing that, is that what it was?
What
So
it
this was your
yeah.
brain okay, I was trying
This
to.
was, I didn't know if Katie was gonna send it.
Okay, all right.
It's
so, all
fine,
right.
but
No wonder. All right, I don't want to get in your head, because I was trying to
Oh,
evidently, and
yeah.
I didn't. I couldn't follow all this.
I don't wanna get in my head.
I couldn't follow all this, and I said, so anyway, at some point between now and June, you're going to have to go before the Board of Selectmen and make sure that our rates are adequate, not only to cover the cost, but to cover any, if, God forbid, one of these pumps, and we've talked about it, that we have to pump, that are on Route 12 there, that we will go by. If they fail, you're talking about a backup for the whole system here, that, so you want to make sure all those things are, we have money secure to maintain, and I know we budgeted money for you to, if we
Upgrade
could,
pumps,
assuming we
yeah.
could fix the pumps, and assuming we could find parts to fix the pumps.
That's right, we've got pumps on order from other appropriations, I think they've been on
Right.
order for several months. I mean, these pumps are not just
Right.
sitting on a shelf, they're not like trash pumps, little trash pumps, they're several thousands of dollars, and they're several months out under normal circumstances, so.
And if they fail, they affect more than a homeowner. They affect everybody.
But between the appropriations, the one that was requested this year, previous years for, I think, 12 and 56 in the high school, those are still in the works to get those pumps. We should be poised to have backups at most of our, if not all of our pump stations at that point. But it's, as soon as a pump goes down, which it happens, it's
Gotta have a
happened.
backup.
We use the backup, and then you don't have a backup, so.
Right.
And then you're looking at bypass pumping, you're looking at renting a vac truck from Auburn to come in, or paying for septic haulers to come and pump down wet wells so they don't overflow and.
That's like a
you know,
bucket
impact.
brigade.
Yeah, so.
The amount of effluent that goes through there.
Yeah. And again, we've been fortunate because
have
the
a bucket
system is
brigade.
relatively new. We're not like a Worcester or Boston or some of these other places where the sewers are, well over 100 years old, right?
Right.
We've got new sewers, but we still have some issues. We still have some I&I things to sort out in the North Service area, so our retained earnings could be, appropriated to address those.
And I know we've already budgeted money capital requests for the pumps, but we don't,
Yeah.
as you said, they're all back ordered. So hopefully we've addressed it when they're here before, God forbid something happens. Because that will be a nightmare.
Gravity's good if you have it to use.
Yeah.
Right.
And of course, then you're going down the line, and we talked about this when we were talking about the program we just did with the grant, that the other communities, like Auburn, has backups. Because we have a backup and they don't, it still backs up. In other words, it's a domino effect. So we were talking about making sure in the system, the total system, which we're a part of, everybody is on the same page as far as backups and security, as far as so that it keeps flowing all the way to Blackstone.
That's right. Yeah, and that's something Auburn, obviously, they have concern there too, and the arrangement between Oxford and Auburn's been in place for many years, and but that's something they want to look at, especially with new personnel in there, is do they have the capacity on their end? They're concerned about their own economic development opportunities. So we'll work closely with them. I know they're looking at their fee structure to Oxford now, but we'll partner with them too if there's an opportunity. I know the manager had spoke to that in some discussions with them if they are pursuing a Master's grant or some sort of grant opportunity to upgrade their system for economic development opportunities on their side. Well, it's still going to benefit us if they can make sure that they can accommodate our new growth as well. So
Right. It's all part of the same
it's all
system.
downstream, right? You
Right.
need to make sure. Yep.
All right, any other questions? Jared? Well, Jared, you've got a daunting task ahead of you here to hopefully stay within budget. Hopefully you'll be moving, I'm sure, monies between departments as the year goes on.
Thank you.
Thank you for a lot of information and well put together. Thank you, Jared.
Thanks, Jared.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right. What else do we have on the agenda? Well, there's no new old business. The next meeting is going to be on no meeting next week, March 16th, before the Board of Selectmen will be presenting the annual budget, which I think we all have copies of, if I'm right, Trish? Everybody has the,
I don't think you have everybody's yet.
does everybody have does everybody have that?
No.
Oh,
So John, that one wasn't final, that was just a.
preliminary, but no, so that, between now and then, they'll be getting this, right, Katie?
Yes.
All that, so that you'll have the whole budget, even though we haven't met with all the departments yet, but, all right. Other than that, so the 16th, and what time would that be, Trish? That will be at 7? When, or do we meet first? How are we doing this? We convene,
Usually we do 6 o'clock and we have a couple smaller departments.
and then we adjourn, and then we join the selectmen?
is doing the agenda for that, and I haven't seen it yet.
No, we normally get a couple departments before they start their meeting at 7.
Oh, but this is a special meeting for them, isn't it?
Or this is a special meeting.
So I think it's different than what we normally do.
So this is just a special meeting for them, all right.
Yeah.
Last year, we did a meeting that had a couple, and then we adjourned our meeting, joined their meeting, and then came back and adjourned our meeting. So, okay, I'm just trying to get
I think they usually meet on Tuesdays, but they're doing this on a Wednesday.
so this is a special, it'll just be for us? Okay. And that, we don't know the time yet. It's 7
No.
normally, I think it's what they do, but I'm guessing.
6 o'clock, I
I think
think,
it's
but.
at 6 o'clock.
Okay, just so everybody knows, so that,
I'll forward the agenda when.
Oh, okay, once you get it, okay.
Okay.
All right, so that, we'll keep that, the 16th open.
But
Yeah,
we're
do I-
hosting that, or is the selectmen, are they hosting it?
It's a joint.
It's a joint meeting,
okay,
so,
okay.
but they're putting the agenda together. I'm assuming it'll be here.
Okay.
That said, nothing else before us. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Yule?
Yes.
Ms. Mazeka?
Yes.
Mr. Steiner?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Casey?
Yes.
Ms. Brick?
Yes.
You're still awake over there, huh?
All right, meeting's adjourned.